cotton candy machine costs $400. A bag of sugar costs $3. The margin on a single cone at a $5 retail price is roughly 94% on ingredient cost alone. Those three numbers are the foundation of every business opportunity pitch you have ever seen about cotton candy, and they are also the least useful numbers for understanding whether this business actually works. The product margin is not the business, it is the starting point. A bag of commercial flossing sugar from Gold Medal Products, the dominant supplier in the American carnival food industry, runs $15 to $25 for a 3.5-pound bag and produces 70 to 100 servings. Add a paper cone stick at 2 to 5 cents each, and total material cost per serving lands under 30 cents. That is real. What surrounds it is where the business either holds together or falls apart, because the margin only materializes when someone is standing in front of the machine, ready to buy. And getting that person there costs money that the per-cone math does not capture. The equipment is not the barrier. A tabletop commercial machine runs $400 to $700 new. A high-capacity floss bubble machine designed for sustained fair volume runs $1,500 to $3,000. A full carnival-style cart with integrated display and storage runs $2,500 to $5,000. You can be operational for under $2,000. The machine sitting in a storage unit generates zero revenue and zero margin. And that is the version of this business that most new operators end up with by the end of year one. The central constraint is location. Cotton candy sells exclusively to people who are already in a context that has primed them to spend money on a treat. You cannot create that context. You can only find it and pay to be inside it. The locations where that context exists reliably are county and state fairs, outdoor festivals and carnivals, tourist boardwalks, sporting events, shopping malls with high foot traffic, and private events like weddings, corporate gatherings, and birthday parties. Every one of those locations comes with a different access model, a different cost structure, and a different level of competition. And which category you are building inside determines the economics almost entirely. The fair and festival circuit is the most visible entry point, and also the most punishing environment for someone new to this business. Vendor space at a large regional fair costs $1,500 to $5,000 for the duration of the event. At a major state fair, a prime location can cost $10,000 or more. That fee is paid before you open. It does not adjust for rain, for low foot traffic on a Tuesday, or for the competing vendor 30 feet away selling the same product. Most major state fairs allocate space through a competitive application process, where established concessionaires have priority and new applicants frequently wait years before receiving a slot. The application itself requires proof of insurance, health department documentation, and a demonstrable history of commercial food vending operation. The full operating cost of a 12-day fair is not the space rental alone. A two-person cart through 12 operating days costs roughly $3,000 in labor at minimum wage, not counting your own time. Add transportation and lodging if the fair is not local, generator costs if the location does not provide electrical hookup, and supplies for projected volume. Total operating costs before your own compensation land around $8,000. To break even at $5 per cone, you need to sell roughly 1,660 cones across 12 days, about 140 per day. At a busy fair with good weather, that is achievable. At a slow fair with 2 or 3 rain days, it is not. The space fee does not care which version of the fair you got. Weather is not a risk factor in this business. It is a structural feature. Cotton candy absorbs humidity and collapses when it rains. Customers do not line up for spun sugar in a downpour. An explanation of a rained-out weekend at an outdoor festival produces zero revenue on a day where the space fee, the labor cost, and the supplies you brought are already spent. Operators who survive more than 2 seasons budget for a percentage of lost operating days from the beginning and price their successful days accordingly. The ones who do not plan for it are the ones who find themselves at an empty festival at 4 in the afternoon, calculating how many cones they need to sell before close to avoid losing money on the trip. The seasonal constraint turns the full-time income question into a real math problem. The outdoor event season in most of the continental United States runs April through October. 7 months in the South, 5 in northern states. Every dollar needed to cover 12 months of personal expenses, equipment depreciation, insurance, and vehicle costs has to come out of those operating months. An operator working 20 events per season at an average net of $25 each generates $20,000 for the year. Working 20 events at an average net of $2,500 generates $50,000. The difference between those two outcomes is almost entirely a function of event selection quality and how many good weather weekends the operator actually gets, neither of which is fully controllable. The private event market operates on a different logic and should be understood as a separate model. Weddings, corporate events, birthday parties, school carnivals, and graduation parties happen year-round, often indoors, and the client has already decided they want a cotton candy station before they contact you. Instead of selling cones one at a time to strangers making impulse decisions, you charge the host a flat booking fee plus a per-hour or per-guest rate. A 2-hour private event booking runs $250 to over $750, depending on market, customization level, and travel required. Custom colors match to event themes, personalized packaging, and individually wrapped bags add to both the rate and the perceived value. The volume is predictable, the duration is fixed, and you're not competing with 8 other vendors for the same customer's dollar. The downside is that private event clients require active sales effort. You need an online presence with real photos from real events, reviews and testimonials, and referral relationships with event venues and wedding planners. That pipeline takes 6 to 12 months to build from zero, and during that period, the incoming bookings do not yet reflect the work being done. A single operator who combines both models, using outdoor fairs and markets as the high-volume revenue engine during peak season and private events to extend income into fall and early winter, runs a materially more stable business than one relying entirely on either. The outdoor events produce cash flow in bulk when attendance is high. The private events fill calendar gaps when outdoor options shrink and provide income in months when no fair circuit exists. The regulatory side of this business is not complex compared to a full food service operation, but it is not optional. Most states classify cotton candy as a non-potentially hazardous food because it requires no refrigeration and carries minimal food safety risk. Despite that, most states still require a mobile food vendor permit or cottage food license to sell at public events, and many counties require a separate local business license. Virtually every fair and festival organizer requires proof of a $1 million general liability insurance policy before a vendor can set up on the grounds. That policy costs $300 to $800 per year, depending on the carrier and coverage level. Operators crossing county or state lines regularly need to track different permit requirements in each jurisdiction, and letting any of those lapse creates a situation where you show up to an event and cannot operate. The professional concessionaire model represents what this business looks like when it actually functions as a primary income at meaningful scale. A full-time concessionaire operates multiple carts simultaneously across events in multiple states, holds multi-year contracts at major fairs that guarantee their spots, employs seasonal workers who follow the circuit, and buys sugar and supplies at commercial pricing rather than retail. When fixed costs spread across multiple carts and multiple events, the per-unit economics improve substantially. One vehicle, one insurance policy, one booking infrastructure, one supply chain serving 3 or 5 or 10 operating units instead of one. At that scale, the cotton candy margin translates into a real business return. Getting there requires years of event relationship building, capital for equipment and logistics, and a management capability that does not come from owning a machine. The established operators at major state fairs have often held those contracts for a decade or longer, and no new entrant can shortcut that queue by simply applying. Operators who pursue fixed location placements instead of the event circuit find a different risk structure. A cotton candy kiosk inside a shopping mall or tourist attraction typically operates on a revenue share agreement, paying the venue 15 to 25% of gross sales rather than a flat fee. When traffic is slow, the payment to the venue scales down proportionally. When traffic is strong, the venue takes its cut from a larger base. A high-traffic mall location on a busy Saturday generates $600 to $1,200 in gross revenue. After the venue cut, supplies, and one shift of labor, the net from that day is $300 to $600. Over a full year with consistent traffic, that adds up to a real income. The challenge is that those locations are not freely available. They require a negotiated multi-year contract, a demonstrably professional operation, and often a capital deposit or kiosk build-out contribution before the first day of operation. Sugar prices are a commodity risk that experienced operators account for systematically, and new ones tend to ignore until it becomes a problem. Raw sugar trades on global futures markets and responds to drought in producing regions, trade policy shifts, and currency movements. Between 2022 and 2024, global sugar prices reached their highest levels in more than a decade. An operator whose pricing is built around a specific cost per serving faces a structural problem when that cost rises 20 or 30% during the season, because the fairgoer does not know or care that sugar got more expensive. Raising retail prices risks losing customers to other vendors. Holding prices while costs climb eats directly into a margin already measured in cents per cone. Experienced operators buy sugar in bulk at the start of the season and lock in costs for their projected volume, treating input price exposure the same way any commodity-dependent business does. Adding complementary products is a decision most serious operators eventually make. A single product cart is simpler to run but carries a narrow seasonal window and no buffer when conditions are suboptimal for cotton candy specifically. Snow cones, popcorn, and lemonade add complexity but also increase per customer spend and generate revenue on days when heat, humidity, or crowd mood would otherwise slow cotton candy sales. Adding any product that requires refrigeration or involves higher food safety risk changes the health department classification in most jurisdictions and can trigger additional permitting requirements. Cotton candy photographs well. The translucent pastel colors, the texture, the visual drama of the spinning machine, and the novelty of custom flavors make it one of the most social media compatible food products that exists. Operators with a real Instagram or TikTok presence consistently report increases in private event bookings and in walk-up traffic at public markets, where people recognize the vendor from content they have already seen and seek them out rather than discovering them by accident. Maintaining that presence takes time. For a solo operator, it happens on top of running the cart, managing logistics, tracking permits, and doing the administrative work of a small business. The operators who do it consistently describe it as the highest return non-operating activity in their business. They also describe it as work that never stops. The honest income reality for this business breaks into three tiers that promotional content almost always collapses into one. A part-time operator running 10 to 15 local events per season, working alone, with used equipment paid off, generates $8,000 to $25,000 in gross revenue and nets $5,000 to $18,000 after all costs. That is supplemental income in most American markets, not a living wage. A full-time operator running 25 to 35 events per season, mixing fairs with private events, managing additional workers on larger events, generates $60,000 to $130,000 in gross revenue and nets $25,000 to $60,000 after operating costs. That is a real self-employment income for someone who selects events carefully, manages costs tightly, and works most weekends from April through October with no option to take one off. The highest earning operators in this industry run concession businesses, not single cart operations. They operate multiple simultaneous events with a workforce that lets the owner manage instead of spin sugar. That level takes years to build and capital to sustain through the years before the contracts and relationships are in place. The cotton candy business is not a scam, and it is not a lottery ticket. The product margin is real. The access cost is also real. The variability of revenue between those 2 points is where the actual economics live, and that variability is determined by factors an operator can influence but cannot fully control: weather, event selection, crowd size, competition on the fairgrounds, and the sugar market.
An operator who understands those variables and builds a business around managing them can build something that works. An operator who buys the machine because the math looked good on a screenshot is going to spend one season learning what the math does not show. That education costs a season. The machine only costs $400.